I'm glad you're still watching RwandaTV. My name is Frederick Golooba Mutebi, your guest anchor tonight. Some of the participants of the Commonwealth Heads of Government meeting say that it was a good platform to share ideas and learn from each other. They also say that it served as an opportunity to expand their business activities through networking.
Frederick Golooba Mutebi joins us here on RwandaTV to tell us about what he has actually seen on what is happening in Kigali, the Commonwealth Heads of Government meeting. Now, this man, first of all, is threatening my job, and this is not something new that he... Well, it's a bit different. I know I've known him as a writer for so many years. He's a political scientist. He's he's an analyst. Of course, you've seen him many times. He's a writer, but he's an independent researcher. And thank you so much for finding time to join us.
My pleasure. Thank you for inviting me.
You should consider anchoring as your next
job. I've done it for just a few minutes, but I thought I was getting quite comfortable. I might threaten your job very soon.
I'm actually very happy. I mean, we don't easily get people like you joining us here and, to act like anchors. So thank you so much for accepting. Now let's dive straight to what is happening in the region, rather in the country, the Commonwealth. I mean, I was telling people that it's very historic, but from your own perspective as someone who understands politics, how historic is this event?
Well, it's very historic, at least from the point of view of Rwandans, because first of all, Rwanda is a very young member of the Commonwealth. It joined in 2009. It's the youngest. It couldn't have been obvious that Rwanda would be accorded the privilege of hosting this summit. So I think that the fact that this summit has happened here only a few years down the road since Rwanda acceded to the membership of the Commonwealth means that the organization and its members take the country very seriously. It also means that the government of Rwanda would have engaged in some deft footwork to convince members that not only was it a suitable venue for this summit, but that it also possessed the capacity to pull off a successful event. As we have all seen, it has been very successful. It hasn't ended completely, but at least those of us who have had the privilege to attend the forums that we have been to, we have seen really quite impressive organization. I think that Rwanda has now proved itself as a very able and skilled organizer of large events of this kind.
Okay, talking about impressions, let's talk about the impressions in terms of the content and what is being discussed. What are your impressions so far? I mean, I know we still have a day to go, but what have been your impressions in regards to the content and what is being discussed?
Well, I was fortunate to be able to register to attend 3 forums: the People's Forum, the Women's Forum, and the Business Forum. In all these forums, a lot of very serious issues were being discussed, issues of great importance, not only to the Commonwealth, but to the world at large. I mean, people are talking about climate change and how to mitigate the effects of climate change. People are talking about women in development, how to ensure that women's rights are respected. People are talking about gender-based violence and how that can be prevented and how men can be co-opted into participating in efforts to prevent gender-based violence. I went to the People's Forum, and there they were discussing things to do with health and how best to deliver health to especially poor and marginalized communities, and how to improve the quality and delivery of health care, generally speaking. They were also talking about things like governance, and how to establish effective systems of government that are able to deliver services to people, especially in countries like ours. But for me, the highlight of all this was the Business Forum. The sessions I attended there, I attended one on the collaboration between the Kigali International Financial Center and Jazz Finance. And I was very struck by this very interesting partnership between Rwanda and the government of Jersey, which is not one of the traditional donors. So there is a sense in which the government of Rwanda is thinking outside the box as far as sourcing external assistance to try and pursue and achieve some of its objectives is concerned. And I was made to wonder why it is that our other African governments are not doing the same. Because you see, whenever we want help, we look to the United States, USAID, we look to the UK, we look to France, Belgium, and so on. Increasingly to China and to some degree Russia as well. But I think that when you look at the way the government of Rwanda has gone about the task of transforming this country, you see that they have brought in the Qataris here. The Emirate of Qatar is a big development partner for Rwanda.
And he was attending the
Emir. And the Emir of Qatar was here. There are countries like Estonia. Rwanda has partnerships with Estonia. Rwanda has been very unconventional in this kind of way, in that it partners with countries which are not traditional donors, but it also partners with organizations.
Like FIFA, for instance.
Yes. FIFA was here. So I think that this is something that is very creative that other governments could try to learn from.
Brilliant. Now, let me ask two questions. I will just ask them at once, and then you'll briefly look at them. How relevant is Commonwealth heads of government, Commonwealth actually as an association, especially to the young people? And what do you think Rwanda should focus on, going into holding the chairmanship? President Kagame now takes over as the chairman of the Commonwealth.
Well, if you consider how young people gain from the Commonwealth or membership of their countries in the Commonwealth, I think that they actually gain more than other groups, because from my experience, the Commonwealth is most active in the cultural arena. The organization hands out thousands of scholarships to students across the entire membership of the 54 states. A lot of young people from these countries go to study in British universities on Commonwealth scholarships. Some will go to Switzerland, New Zealand, others will go to Australia. So at the level of cultural exchange, this involves mainly young people. When I was a student in the United Kingdom, I benefited from a program courtesy of the Commonwealth that allowed at the time, I don't know if it still happens now, but I hope it does.
At least I know there is chevening program happening at least.
Yeah, but there was another program. Because you see, if you go to the United Kingdom as a student, you're not allowed to work. But under a program championed by the Commonwealth, you're actually able to work for 2 years if you're from a Commonwealth country. And I took advantage of that program, and it was a kind of bridging program between my master's degree and my doctorate. And this also is a very useful window that young people can use to gain some work experience there. So young people have a lot of ways in which they can benefit from the Commonwealth.
Briefly about expectations on
now, expectations, I would like to think that if we look at how President Kagame managed the AU when he was chairman of the AU for the 1 year that he was very active. He set up various committees to champion some of the interests of the continent. He brought together a lot of Africans, men and women living abroad, even living in Africa, to put the expertise at the disposal of the African Union. I would like to believe that he's going to be a very active chairman of the Commonwealth, and that he's going to do some of the creative things that we saw him doing for the AU, for the Commonwealth.
Let's wish him luck.
Indeed.
Frederick Golooba Mutebi, a political scientist, researcher, writer. Thank you so much indeed for finding time to join us here.
My pleasure. Thank you for inviting me.